people think that we're superheroes. We are not. We are very much flawed humans, just like the rest of everybody else that are trying to worship God and love Him and love neighbor in the world. And I don't love how we are put on a pedestal a lot of the times because we are just like everybody else.
Welcome to Truth in Tone. I'm Bekah, a writer and communicator.
And I'm Erik, a local pastor and theologian. Together, we've been married and serving in ministry for over 10 years.
And raising 3 kids.
Yeah, pretty crazy, but they're a lot of fun.
On this podcast, we explore honest conversations that embrace the nuance of topics on marriage, ministry, culture, and Christianity. Because in today's world, it matters not just what we say, but how we say it.
Thanks so much for joining us. Let's get started. Here's the thing I really want to tell you. When we're at the park as a family and our kids are running around, I've noticed that most parents call their son Bubba, like especially if they have siblings.
Absolutely.
But we call our son Bubba all the time. And so when I hear other parents calling their son Bubba, I get a little protective. I'm like, you do not understand. There is only one Bubba, and that is my son.
He's our Bubba.
You got it wrong. You can't use that word here at this park.
Yes, I've absolutely noticed that. Same with Sissy.
Oh, yeah.
Because our kids, since there's 3 of them, our oldest goes by Sissy, and our middle boy goes by Bubba. Yeah.
Yeah. And I only think it applies to our family. So when I hear other families using it, I get kind of like upset.
That's too good. I mean, it definitely causes me to turn my head.
And I think our son definitely turns his head when he hears another family saying Bubba. He's like, what?
Me?
That's me?
I know. That's true, because our kids have no concept of nicknames yet.
No, they don't get it. They just think that's just another name they have.
Yeah.
So.
That's good.
Okay, Bekah, so today we're talking about what it's like to be a pastor and, most importantly, a pastor's wife.
Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Wow. Yeah, this will be a good conversation.
This will be fun. I'm looking forward to just kind of getting to interview each other after 10 years of doing this together. We've never really sat down and recorded a conversation on what it's like to be a pastor and a pastor's wife. And I'm sure 10 years from now, we'll still be looking at this whole thing and being like, wow, we didn't know anything.
Yeah, we'd probably have an entirely different conversation
Absolutely.
10 years from now. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And there's probably going to be some people who are listening that are like, oh, they don't even know the thick of it.
And then others who are like in year 1 of marriage and ministry that are like, oh my goodness, 10 years seems so far from now.
Yes.
But it went by really quick.
Yeah. And even those who are thinking of pursuing the pastoral calling, what it's like specifically. I remember when we were at Biola and there was a professor of mine who was telling us all about pastoral ministry and what it was like. I'll never forget, they looked at the classroom and they said, pastoral ministry is not what you think it is. What you see on Sundays is maybe 10, 15% of what pastors do on a weekly basis. And that kind of shook me there for a second, because I was sitting there thinking like, oh man, like I go to church on Sunday and, maybe I have my Tuesday or midweek activity and help out at youth group or whatever I do. And I usually just thought that the pastor was in charge of what was going on Sunday and preparing his talk. But oh no, there's so many different things that go on throughout the week that you just don't see. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, well, yeah, okay. So that means that there's like 80% of the job is different from that hour on Sunday. And yeah, this episode is going to be a lot of what that 80% is like.
Yeah.
And not just for me, but also for you and what that has entailed for most of our marriage.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the times It's rare that I get to talk about my experience being married to a pastor, because something I've noticed about myself is I don't like introducing myself as a pastor's wife.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
And I think
I'm a pastor's wife.
Totally. And so it's funny because I remember we were new at a church where you had recently been hired as a pastor. And I went to one of the women's Bible studies, mainly just to get to meet some of the ladies there. And it didn't come up in conversation until our last week together.
That's right.
And it was so funny how many women there. It changed the entire conversation and the way that I was able to engage with people.
Yeah.
And that's why I often don't lead with that.
Fascinating. So what was it about the posture that was so different?
So I think when they don't associate me with, oh, Pastor Eric, they're like, oh, she's just another gal. And I'm able to kind of talk about my life and all these things. And then as soon as they heard like, oh, wait a second, are you married to Eric? I was like, yeah. They're like, why didn't you say anything? And then the conversation immediately went into a lot of the things that you oversee and do. It was no longer about, Bekah, like, let's talk about your life. It shifted to, oh, okay. Let's I'm curious about these things that your husband is overseeing. And, oh, I did this thing. I attended this thing that your husband did. And which is totally fine. But it changes it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do people view you as like a little bit more holy? Like, was it kind of a moment where they're like, oh my gosh, like we are in the presence of a pastor's wife here?
Yeah, I've definitely had those moments where sometimes like someone will come up to me after they discover that I'm married to you, and they'll be like, oh my goodness, I'm so embarrassed that I shared this in front of you. Oh, wow. Like, it reminds me when you and I were doing CrossFit for a while. Nobody knew that we were a ministry couple. And once they found out, what's the first thing that they all said? They started apologizing for their language.
Oh,
and
yes.
you and I, we hated that because we were like, oh, you guys, like, we're not judging you. And like, please don't treat us any different. We're so happy to be here and be involved in this community.
Yeah. Yeah. They're a great crowd. I really enjoyed working out with them. But yeah, it was really funny when they figured out that I was a pastor. They would none of them went to church. I don't think any of them did.
Yeah.
Or if they had religious backgrounds, they definitely left it. But it was pretty funny because at the time I was working at a church that didn't use the title Pastor Eric. I was just Eric.
Yeah.
And I actually really liked that. But it was funny because at that gym, I was known as Pastor Eric. And at church, I was just known as Eric.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, and they relentlessly teased me, but I absolutely loved it. I thought it was hilarious, and their jokes were all in good fun. But of course, I could sling the jokes right back at them, and they were a good crowd. So.
Yes. Okay. Well, let me ask you this one.
Okay.
So I'm curious to know, what is one misconception about pastors that you wish people could see past?
Oh my gosh. Okay. We are human. Yeah. Like, pastors are fallible, and they make mistakes, and they're human, and we get tired, and we come home at night, and sometimes we can't turn work off because we've had conversations, or there's emails we need to respond to. There's people in crisis. You might get called in the middle of the night, which I have gotten plenty of calls in the middle of the night before because someone was in trouble or they needed pastoral support. People think that we're superheroes. We are not. We are very much flawed humans, just like the rest of everybody else that are trying to worship God and love Him and love neighbor in the world. And I don't love how we are put on a pedestal a lot of the times because we are just like everybody else. Yeah, we have a very important role and a distinct role, but I think a lot of people, like you were saying from the story, view you as kind of like closer to God. Yeah. I remember several different times when we were living in Portland, I would go get my hair cut at these certain places, and when I would eventually let the barber know, the barber would be asking me like, oh yeah, what do you do for a living? And I would say, yeah, well, I'm a pastor. I work at a church. They would instantly, the conversation would shift, and they would instantly start either confessing their sins, talking about where they went to church or if they went to church, or they would just be like, I was Catholic one time, screw it.
Yeah. Well, and there's certain jobs like that that kind of invoke that. And I think a pastor is definitely one of them. And that's something that's really unique is when you're in those settings with people, as soon as they learn, oh, you're a pastor, it causes them to feel a certain way.
Okay, so Bekah, I want to ask you a question now about being a pastor's wife. Would you say it is a vocation or a role?
What instantly comes to mind with that is, I would say, from our experience and even being close to other friends of ours who are married and serving in ministry, I believe wholeheartedly that both people within the marriage have to feel 100% called to it.
So it's a vocation.
Absolutely. I think it is a calling.
Wow.
And even though I am not the one that carries the title nor the educational experience like you do, it is a sacred role. I think you and I have seen the flip side of that, where both the husband and the wife don't feel equally called to serve in ministry. It never ends up working out.
Yes.
Never.
Yeah.
And I think because it requires so much from your family. And that's something where, looking back, I grew up in the church. I loved youth group. I loved my high school pastor and the pastor's wife. I was so drawn to her. And I think for a lot of young girls and young women, we look to the pastor's wife, oftentimes even more than the pastor, because there's this like feminine dynamic, as I don't really feel comfortable going to the male pastor to talk about my struggles, but I do feel comfortable going to his wife. And I have even experienced that being in this role. There have been countless times where women within the ministries that we're serving in text me or reach out to me and say, can we get coffee? And that is a role that I hold so sacred, recognizing, oh my goodness, like they are looking to me for some spiritual guidance.
Yeah.
And I don't have the title.
Yeah.
So that's something that really stands out to me, and why I do feel really called to this.
Yeah. No, that's really insightful. It is amazing to see how, whether you like it or not, you can't just be like, hey, that's just my husband's thing. I'm over here doing my thing. But in reality, it is something that requires both husband and wife. Both seem to share in this journey of pastoral ministry that calls them to a life of serving and loving others.
Yes. And I think a great example of that, you and I both really admire Tim Keller.
Yeah.
And Tim Keller, one of the things that's so compelling about his ministry is he talked about his wife frequently within sermons, within a lot of his books. And he saw it as the two of them were spiritual partners, and they journeyed through things. They were growing together. And that's something that I know I've really appreciated about our marriage, is there have been several points within your pastoral journey that you and I have had to have conversations of like, hey, what do you think I should do in this situation? Or like, hey, can we pray about this together? And I can't imagine if we weren't both devoted and on the same page.
Yeah. How would you say that the role of the pastor's wife shapes the pastoral imagination?
Ooh, can you expand on that?
Yeah, like what is that in light of what we were just talking about with Kathy Keller? What does that look like in light of my role? Like, how have you seen your strengths and your character and who you are lend itself to be a part of the ministry that I mostly oversee at church?
Ooh, oh, I love this question. So a couple of thoughts are coming to mind. So a great example would be for your sermon preparation.
Yep.
Yeah, so as a writer, I love words. I love how we communicate things to an audience. And one of the things that I really appreciate is when you will have spent hours poring over the text and you'll invite me into that process with you. Mm-hmm. And I think because of that, something that I have really appreciated is that it has and I mean, you can speak to this from your perspective too, but recognizing that a lot of the times, if it's only one voice, whether it's a female pastor or a male pastor, if you aren't inviting someone from the opposite gender to speak into the work that you're doing, a lot of the times you can end up only targeting and speaking to that one gender.
Oh, absolutely.
But we know that within a church congregation, I'm not going to throw out a percentage, like every church is going to be different, but there are both men and women within that audience. So I think even pulling apart things like that has been really cool. Mm-hmm. And from the reverse, in my writing, my editing team has even told me, I can see your husband's educational experience woven within your writing. Mm. And that's a huge strength. Mm. And that was so cool to hear them articulate that, because I think I know that, but I've never given voice to it. Mm. And I recognize, because of the conversations that you and I have together and the books that we will talk about with each other, the podcasts that we'll share, we naturally end up kind of like helping to aid one another in our callings and in the work that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I loved a while ago how you were helping me out with my sermon, and I was like, I need an illustration here. And it was funny because it was all about Moses in the wilderness with Israel. And you were like, oh, it's just like on the TV show Survivor. And I was like, that's it. And I was like, well, perfect. This is great, Or it's been really helpful to get your perspective, especially when, I come home from work and I'm dealing with a situation, and I do my best to, be confidential, of course, and to even just get your insight and to be like, babe, like how should I do this? What should the strategy be here? How should I interact with this person? And it's so helpful to have a partner at home who, one, has an incredible gift of empathy, and two, is also just a really great communicator, for me to be able to glean from that wisdom and to bring to you sensitive matters to where it can shape my work for the better is truly a blessing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is making me think of a question that I think would be really interesting to ask you is, how do you carry the weight of people's stories without letting it overwhelm you? Because you have a lot of different roles as a husband and a father and a pastor, and you've been a student for the last 8 years too. So even with those things.
Yeah. The weight of people's stories and what you hear every day can really get to you. It is amazing to see the days that I hear about marriages that are falling apart and people who are just in really not great spaces in life. And it really breaks me. Like there's some days I come home really, really sad because I've had to sit with a lot of people who are hurting. And more often than not, I'm sitting with people who are hurting, not with people who are rejoicing.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So you do get to really rejoice with people when something amazing happens. They get that job they've always wanted, or they were able to have a baby after a lot of unsuccessful attempts. And to be able to get a front row seat at their life is a beautiful thing, but you're also getting a front row seat at their life when everything is falling apart. And when people are losing themselves mentally, when people are losing their spouse and there's nothing you can really do about it, whether that be through divorce or through death. When you come home at the end of the day and you sit down on the couch with your kids running around, you think to yourself, man, what is life? I think the best thing pastors can do is to rest, to really take a day where it's dedicated to Sabbath, and even a digital Sabbath in that, where, hey, I might be really abstaining from my phone or social media, and maybe just taking a day to focus on things that I can control, like cooking or making coffee,
watching a football game.
Watching a football game, of course, yeah. Well, there's a lot of things I can't control with a football game, and how about just not watching my team? Two other teams that I can appreciate, but if I'm watching my team, I'm going to go crazy. So I think it is truly needed for pastors to be able to rest and to enjoy God and to spend time and be with God. Because if a pastor is not taking time to be with God, but instead pouring out God to others, you won't effectively be able to do your job. Yeah.
So what does that look like for you? Like, how do you be able to sustain a intimate relationship with God?
Yeah.
In the midst of all of that?
I think the times that I can get out of the house and be alone for a little bit, maybe that's a 15, 20-minute workout that I know you're going to be okay. And for me, I'll be fine. And I can go on a run. Sometimes I don't even listen to music, and I pray, or I just take time to be with God. The other day, I just basically went out and ran for a little bit, and then I just spent the last portion of my workout walking and talking with God. And I think that is so, so crucial, especially to just find a sense of presence and to talk with him in the midst of busyness and chaos, to have a place that I can go and be alone with him. And I think a lot of the times when we think of practicing silence and solitude, it's like, all right, I'm going to go away this weekend and be in the mountains and the trees and try to get alone and be with God. And that's great. If you have the ability to do that, awesome. I envy that.
We celebrate that.
I celebrate that. I envy that in this stage. But if it's even just for 20 minutes that I can get outside and be alone, and I have no one else distracting me, oh, that is awesome. And I can get recharged that way. Mm-hmm. So, in summary, making time for rest and making time for myself to be alone with God, whether that be through prayer, silence and solitude, or just getting some time in the Word. As a pastor's wife, what are some sacrifices that are often overlooked by most people?
Yeah. The immediate response coming to mind is probably going to be pretty sad, but it's very honest. And that would be the sacrifice of vulnerability.
Okay. Say more.
Yeah. What I have come to learn is you can be vulnerable to a certain extent. And what I mean by that is I think it is very, very important to have safe, trusted friends outside of the church that you are serving within. And we have had to learn that the hard way before.
Oh, yeah.
Of, oh my goodness, I thought these were safe, trusted people that I could share when I'm struggling, or when like you and I had an argument, or just natural things that happen within the life of a family. And when that can be used against you, that is one of the most painful experiences. And because of experiencing times like that, I think it has taught me that that is one of the roles, or that is one of the biggest sacrifices, is loneliness. And I will never forget, I studied loneliness in leadership and the need for human connection for my graduate program. And I got to interview one of the senior pastors that you were working with at the time at the church that we were at. And you and I, to this day, we really respect his ministry.
Oh, yeah.
He was such a quality leader.
I am blessed to have known that man and to just learn the craft of pastoral ministry underneath him. And anyways, go on.
Yeah. And I got to interview him and I asked him about this very thing. And I said, have you ever experienced loneliness in being a lead pastor? And without any hesitation, he said, absolutely. And it was kind of this aha moment for me of, okay, that is one of the costs of leadership. And it doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile. I think instead, I asked him, like, so what does that look like for you then? How do you still go about 30 years of doing pastoral ministry then? And he said, it's having a few trusted friends outside of the very place that you're doing ministry in. Mm-hmm. The ones that you can share the last 2% with, that you normally wouldn't share, what you certainly wouldn't share with other congregants, but that you can have some accountability with other people that are also serving in ministry and understand it. And so those are some friendships that I consider very sacred. The ones where I can sit with them and say, hey, like, here's what happened. I need your prayer. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the biggest sacrifice that comes to mind. And I think now that we've been doing it for so long, I still feel like I'm able to show up as my like wholehearted self at church.
Yeah.
Like when people talk to me, I will certainly still share like the good and the hard. But I maybe won't share the hard in the same vulnerable way that I would with safe others.
Yeah. Like you can't necessarily say like, oh my gosh, it's just so hard right now at church. We just don't know the direction of where things are going, or we had to have a hard conversation with leadership. Like you wouldn't just say that to anybody there. And they shouldn't know that, you know, that's really none of their business. And it's also just not helpful for them in light of their perception of the congregation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is an interesting space because it's not like you're being fake, but at the same time, it's almost like you're being a little reserved.
Yeah. And I think there's a wisdom to that.
Absolutely.
Too.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, it was really hard for me to understand that and to have to learn it, where I was like, what? Like I should be able to show up as my whole self everywhere. Yeah. And now I recognize, no, you know what? Like when I think about people that I really admire and that I look up to, they don't share the nitty gritty with me, nor do I need them to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It probably lends to a even greater discussion on pastors from the pulpit. How transparent or vulnerable are you with your congregation? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I probably would caution against transparency. You probably shouldn't be sharing everything in your life. You know, that would be a little problematic. I would say that there is areas to be vulnerable, but I would say that we should proceed with caution when sharing those things.
Yeah.
So it's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say that one. And then the other main thing that comes to mind is time.
Yeah.
It's a big sacrifice when it comes to time for our family. Like we can't just take a vacation whenever we want. And I know that there's several jobs that are like that too. Mm-hmm. But also when a crisis arises, there have been times where you and I have a babysitter and it's a sacred date night that we don't get very often because we don't live close to grandparents. Mm-hmm. And you'll get a phone call and it's someone in crisis and you want to pray with them and show up for them in that moment. And so there have been several times where it's like, Oh, man. Okay. Not that the date gets canceled, but that it gets delayed or something along those lines.
Or it's like, yeah, okay, we're in the car driving to the date, and I'm like, okay, this person would not stop talking, and I'm sitting there trying to pray with them, and also I'm worried about them. So it's like,
Right.
And you're bringing that while we're like waiting for our food to come, and it's like, can't we just rest and relax and like talk about the funny things the kids did, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think those things, but again, it goes back to because you and I are aligned in viewing this as a calling, when those calls come in, recognizing it's not this like horrific thing, like, oh, what an inconvenience. Instead, it's like, no, hey, what an honor to get to be the first person that this individual thought to call.
Yeah, there have been several instances where people have called me and said, hey, you're the first person I've told, but so-and-so has passed away. Or, hey, like, I just want to share with you the exciting things that are happening in my life. It's an incredible privilege, but it does come at great cost. And so I think if people are thinking about pastoral ministry and pursuing what that looks like, know that your time is not always going to be your own. But there are some really cool things you get to be a part of that are super special.
Yes. And on that note, so talk to us about those special things. Like, what is a moment within your pastoral career that you will always remember? Maybe it's something that reminds you of why you do this work.
I think the number one thing I absolutely love doing is baptism. That is the coolest thing. I have the incredible privilege currently right now of being able to sit down and lead the baptism class at our church. And I get to talk about what baptism is, why we do it. And, that's cool. But the awesome part is sitting down and saying, okay, let's hear your story. I want to know, how did you come to know Jesus? Why are you making the decision to get baptized, and why now? And I hear some of the coolest things. I've heard people who have had dreams about Jesus, and they grew up in a Muslim country, and they said, yeah, the man in white visited me and told me about who he was. And I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is things that I just hear, but I've never actually heard someone tell me this before. I've seen people who have been incarcerated or have been addicted to drugs on the streets get their life back in order, and through baptism has been the means of like them coming to know Jesus, or taking that step in obedience that has called them to a more powerful ministry and greater discipleship. I've seen people who are just like, yeah, I'm in, let's do this. And the whole trajectory of their life changes. You get to be at a crucial hinge moment in their life where they are making a decision that will affect the rest of their lives. And I am in the tub with them, getting to hear them profess that they believe in the death and resurrection of Jesus. And everyone else around me doesn't really get to hear that.
Yeah.
But I do. And to say, based on your confession of faith, I now baptize you in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And you literally get a front row seat about what it is to put them under the water and bring them back up, and to hug them and see them cry. Oh,
those moments. I am not somebody who cries easily, but every single time at any baptism, I am a weepy mess because it's such this beautiful moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have never gotten to baptize somebody, but getting to hear what your experience is like, my goodness, what an honor.
What I love about baptism is that it is a multifaceted picture and illustration. It doesn't just mean one thing, but there's just so many things going on at once. Someone is leaving their old life and stepping into new life. They are identifying with the story of Jesus. They are even modeling for themselves the life that they will share in the new heavens and new earth. And that they will share in the resurrection of Jesus as well. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool things going on. with baptism. And I think if I have to pinpoint it, I'm like, yeah, that's why I do what I do. It's not for the times that you're standing up in front of everybody at church and you give an amazing sermon and people are crying or people are coming up to you laughing at the amazing story you told. It's the moments that I really get to shepherd souls into the presence of Christ and have him do the life-changing work. As many times as you want to say, like, oh man, I did this really cool wedding, or, I got to be part of this cool pastoral counseling session, or preached a great sermon, whatever that was. No, I get to be there and get to shepherd souls to Jesus, to watch him do the work that he does best. That's the cool thing about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the best books that I've read for pastoral ministry is a book called The Care of Souls by Harold Senkbeil. I think that's how we say his name, Harold Senkbeil. And he is a Lutheran pastor that has put together what it is like to be a pastor and what you can expect out of it. He insists that pastors are not CEOs. They're not managers. They're not entertainers. Their core calling is to be a shepherd of souls. And this means that a pastor's work is rooted in two things: word and sacrament. It's not in chasing cultural relevance or organizational success. It is how we shepherd souls to the presence of Jesus. Here's a quote from his book that I just have absolutely loved. But he says this: "You are not the engineer of anyone's spiritual life.
Ooh.
You are the shepherd who leads people to Jesus, who alone restores souls." As a pastor, I think a lot of the times we think we've got to have this program or the structure. We've got to figure out this thing that no one else has figured out. And then we've got to lead from that space. We've got to put books out there. We've got to have podcasts. We got to have a cool social media presence. We have to have the cool quotable things that people are going to repost or say funny things on Twitter. No. Your job is to not create this thing that people are going to just be a part of, this ecosystem in your church that people are going to flock to. Your job is to shepherd souls well to the presence of Jesus. And if you can do that, you're an effective pastor.
Yes. I'm like, preach. Yeah. And I think we need to be reminded of that.
Yeah.
And I think equally true for those that are sitting underneath spiritual authority, like the pastors that are serving within your church. It's one of those recognizing, like, okay, I'm not just showing up and expecting that their word is 100% true. Like being able to listen and understand they're human, like what you're saying. And they're here to encourage me in my faith and to help draw me back into alignment with Christ and the work that he's doing in my life. Yeah.
And that's really what it's all about. They're not up there to make funny jokes or to, make sure that you're having the best possible church experience in the world. Like, maybe that's part of it, but the most important thing is that I can say that my pastor helps lead me to Jesus and takes me there and brings me to his presence. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Amen.
In the same way, what would you say gets you out of the bed in the morning to be a pastor's wife? Like, I mean, it's not like you're waking up being like, "Hey, can't wait to be a pastor's wife today and just lead the women's Bible study." But also it's more so like, man, what is it that keeps you in this? I know I get out of bed every day and go to work to do my pastoral duties, but what is it that keeps you in the fight?
Yeah. So since you just shared a book that I have really admired is by Kate Bowler, and it's called The Preacher's Wife: The Precarious Power of Evangelical Women Celebrities.
Wow.
And it's really fascinating. Honestly, it's a very academic book to read because I think it was her dissertation or something like that.
Well, I like those.
Yeah. But what I really took away from it was recognizing that by proxy of being married to a pastor, I am given power. And that's something within communication theory that we study a lot, is recognizing the power dynamics that are inherent within every relationship.
Wow.
For a pastor and a pastor's wife, even though I do not have the seminary training that you do, I do not have the title that you do, I do not have the same responsibilities that you do, just by me being married to you, people treat me and look at me with some form of power. And so for me, I always want to be aware of that and yield it wisely. You know, like the old Spider-Man quote of like, with great power comes great responsibility.
Uncle Ben.
Yeah. So for me, I want to shepherd that well too. And I have always loved discipleship. I like to say that I am a product of intentional discipleship. I have had so many men and women of godly character that have spoken into my life, that have helped shape me into the woman that I am today.
Yeah.
And I love being able to do that for others. And so because of that, like you worked for several years in youth and young adult ministry.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, the young women that came to me and said, "Hey, Bekah, can I meet with you regularly?" Even if it wasn't this like, "Can you mentor me?" Like it was essentially a mentorship relationship. And I really valued that. And it was something that I was like, yeah, I have these young women that are looking up to me as like, "Hey, you've walked with Jesus longer than I have. Can you talk to me about your faith?"
Yeah.
So for me, that's something that's important to me, that I want my faith to be cultivated separately from just piggybacking off of your faith.
Yeah. That's so important. I love hearing that.
Something that I think would be really interesting for you to share about is, what is it like to tell someone no? And I want to give a reason why I'm asking this question. I have often admired this about you. You're willing to say no, even if it means the person might be upset or even disappointed, because the reason you're saying no is you're approaching whatever situation it is from a scriptural lens and saying, I care about this role that I've been entrusted with, and I want to be honoring to God and honoring to you.
Yeah. I have always kind of approached my role with a lot of seriousness, in that pastoral ministry is not just a, yeah, you want to do this? Okay, let's make it happen. Cool. I'll just be the person that makes you happy. I almost think of my role kind of like a doctor, you know, and I've got to prescribe the best thing for this person in order to live a healthy life with God. A lot of the church fathers saw themselves the same way. And if you're considering pastoral ministry or just trying to understand more about what that's like, reading the church fathers has been monumental for understanding, look, here was the people that literally the apostles were like, okay, after, all of them died, it was like left in these guys' hands. We call them the church fathers because they are the people to steward the early church first. And they are not just these ivory tower theologians, but they were pastors who were trying to literally care for their people. And they took it with a lot of seriousness. I think if we just kind of say yes to everybody, then we're probably not doing our job and we're not stewarding God's holiness well. There have been several times where someone wants to get baptized, someone wants to get married, someone wants to do something at church that thinks is a really, really good idea, but I see a tornado happening from a mile away and I have to say no. And it's really, really difficult because a lot of these things, in fact, all of these things come from good intentions.
Yeah.
But in reality, they don't understand the magnitude of what is taking place. And for me as a pastor to step in and to say no it is helpful for them to understand that what we are doing is we are upholding God's holiness in a really profound way. And while they might not understand it in the moment, my prayer is that, like, even if they're disappointed with me, they will take steps to move closer towards God's vision of goodness and beauty in the world. And sometimes I've seen that take place. But tragically, a lot of the times, I just see a lot of people upset with me because I'm not giving them what they want. I remember I had to tell one couple that I wasn't able to marry them because of some decisions that they were making in their life. And it was tragic. Like, they were upset. And I said, yeah, I can't sign off on this pastorally. Like, I can't be up there at the altar and say, yeah, I think this is going to work out. Like, what we're doing here is a picture of Christ in the church. And yeah, it's really sad. But there have been moments, though, that I have seen couples who are willing to adjust or to make changes in their life. And, we've gotten to the altar and I've said, yeah, this is it. This is what God desires, because it's not just about them having their special day. What we're doing is we're also preaching to everybody else and telling them about what God is going to do for the world, and that we will be met with each other, reunited with Christ as his bride. And people are getting a picture of that whole instance. So yeah, I think it is really key and crucial that pastors do say no to people, and it's so that they can come to know the holiness of God.
Yeah, well, and what it enables too is when you have a person that, instead of getting upset and leaving the church because they were told no, when they're willing to stay and to humbly submit to someone of spiritual influence and recognize, okay, I may not understand right now, but help me to understand. On the flip side of that, when they have done the work and continued showing up, the celebration on the other side, when you do get to say, hey, I think you're ready, let's baptize you.
Yeah.
That, I just feel like it makes it all the more of a beautiful moment too.
Yeah, it's literally the same thing when we've had a lot of people who are really zealous and passionate for something and they want to serve in this area, and we tell them no. It's amazing to see who leaves and who sticks around. And oftentimes I am way more impressed with the people that stick around and are like, I'm going to work through it. And I know it's not a no now, but maybe someday when I'm ready. And the celebration, to enter in and be like, God is working and changing your heart in beautiful ways. And they emerge a different person because of it.
Yeah. And we praise God for those moments.
Yeah.
Okay. So in wrapping up this episode, I'd love for us to just touch on briefly, like, we've gotten to share about our experiences of being married and in ministry and what that looks like. And I think it would be really fun just to close out by giving like one final summarizing statement each of like, okay, so for those that have stuck around and listened to this entire episode, what is one takeaway or an encouragement or a final word that you have?
I've got to quote my boy, Gregory the Great, one of the church fathers who has inspired my life in several ways and also the vocation that I do. He was someone who lived kind of on the twilight of the Roman world when everything was shifting and the empire was in ruins. And, Gregory provides order and he feeds the poor and he negotiates with the Lombards and keeps the flame of Christianity alive in light of, when everything is shifting. And he says this about pastoral ministry that I find just really intriguing, but he says the conduct of a ruler, or in this case, the leader of a church, should be such that his subjects may not fear to disclose their hidden sins to him, and that by his example, he may show them what they should do. I have always been really, really drawn to that quote because it captures the heart of a pastor. They should not lord over their people in a way that they are afraid of him, but they need to be approachable, and they need to be gentle and kind, and they need to be good listeners. They should also be able to speak to them in a way and model a life for them where they can imitate Christ. And so I think for anybody thinking about the pastoral ministry, it's really not what you think it is. It is a sacred calling that will change your life. It will change other people's, and it will also leave you really, really frustrated on a lot of different days. But it is a deep place where you feel God's pleasure.
Yeah. And I think with that, pray for your pastoral families.
Yes.
Pray for them, the ones that you are within that church.
Yeah.
And not just the lead pastor. I think I would say pray for everyone on staff, because every role matters. Pray
for the sound guy that's trying to figure out how the Sunday service will go. Pray for the pastor of small groups who's like literally trying to make community happen.
Yes, pray for that children's pastor.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, they need a lot of help.
We celebrate them. Yeah.
Yeah, they need volunteers. So if
go volunteer.
Go volunteer if you're listening to this and you're thinking about children's ministry, they need your help. They really do. So, yeah, pray for them, support them, love them. And we've, over the decade that you and I have been married and in ministry, we have felt that love immensely. And it has been one that we have been so touched by the generosity of so many people who have not only just loved us, but loved our children as well.
Yeah, the ones who even just send a text or an email.
Yeah.
Or in passing, just say, I've been praying for you.
Yeah.
That means the world.
It really does. And even when you think, oh, they probably get that all the time. Oh, we don't. We eat that up. Thanks for joining us for today's conversation. The music you're listening to is Friends Don't Lie by the Alphabet Zero. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss what's ahead.
And if today's conversation encouraged you, we'd be incredibly grateful if you'd leave a review. Until next time, keep walking faithfully.